Seeing an overdrawn balance in your daily checking?
Yeah, my mortgage payment tripled.
Everyone on the ground, now!
They choreographed it like a dance.
Semtech Steel has frozen all pension payments.
I want to rob that bank.
These banks practically destroyed this country, and nothing ever happened to them. Let's go get our money back. Yeah.
What if we get more?
We give it to charity.
It's time for a practice run.
We'll be right back. Jump in the basket.
Who the hell you think I am?
Going on in the world anymore. Look what you did to Cindy.
We're gonna need professional help.
You think?
Ladies and gentlemen.
What are you chasing me for?
Don't make me tell you.
Joe walked into the bank holding a yellow envelope, explaining that it was a warning notice about his house. As Jack helped him check the records, they discovered the problem. Joe hadn't received his pension for months. Without that income, the bank couldn't deduct his mortgage payments. Now the interest had skyrocketed, the total debt had nearly tripled, and if he failed to pay soon, a red letter would follow, meaning foreclosure. Joe was nearly 80 years old. Where was he supposed to earn money at this age? Losing his house was no different from losing his life. As he and Jack discussed whether the bank could relax its policy.
Not to worry. You're on the yellow notice. The red one is more weighty.
A loud crash suddenly echoed through the lobby. 3 masked strangers burst in. One controlled the customers while the other 2 rushed the counters, ordering the tellers to stuff cash into bags. No one dared to resist. The staff chose their lives over company money, and the robbery went frighteningly smoothly. The leader noticed Jack nervously muttering and warned him to stay quiet. Joe then claimed his leg was cramping and asked if he could sit. Surprisingly, the robber, clearly someone who still respected the elderly, allowed it. When he noticed Joe's yellow envelope, he even showed sympathy for a man who had been squeezed dry his entire life. Another robber followed Joe's lead, lightly intimidating Jack while emptying his pockets. Jack barely dared to breathe. Soon, the job was done. The 3 robbers walked out with over $15 million, as if it were nothing.
I'm happy to say our time together has ended.
Seeing Jack's soaked trousers, Joe fell into deep thought. The next day, Joe went to the police as a witness. He was the only one who had clearly seen a tattoo on one of the robbers. The police released the tattoo image on the news, along with a reward. A few days later, Joe and his 2 old friends read that the police were stuck and believed the robbers had already escaped. At first, it seemed like just another news story. Then disaster struck. Their factory held an emergency meeting and announced that, due to heavy losses, all pensions were canceled. For retirees like Joe, that money was their lifeline. Losing it meant a dead end. Joe wanted to sue, but Willie pointed out that lawsuits took years. By the time they won, they'd be long buried. The factory knew this, which was why it acted so boldly. If the 3 wanted to survive old age, going back to work seemed to be the only option.
30 years of hard work means shit to you people.
Willie was suffering from kidney failure and now needed a transplant, though he'd never told anyone. Albert earned a little teaching saxophone, but even romance was out of reach because he was broke. Joe was the worst off. He had already received the red foreclosure letter. A few days later, over a meal, Joe finally spoke. He told his friends he had a startup idea. He wanted to do a job at the bank. The others thought he was joking, until Joe pulled out the red letter. In 30 days, his house would be gone. Waiting meant surrender. Fighting back was their only chance. If they succeeded, they could at least enjoy a decent place for their final years. If they failed, prison would mean free food, shelter, and no rent, and inmates usually left old men alone. Either way, at their age, it wasn't really a loss. Strangely, Joe's logic made sense. It was also Willie's birthday, and for once, he wanted to be bold. That night, Joe couldn't sleep. He called Willie to plan in detail. Albert was hesitant, thinking the other 2 had lost their minds, but after some coaxing, he agreed. And just like that, the Twilight Years startup group was born.
Because you're interested.
What are you, my psychiatrist now?
More like a psychic.
Well, then you know I'm going to hang up now.
I'll see you tomorrow, Al.
They decided on a trial run first. Joe and Willie would steal from a supermarket, not money, just to feel the thrill. Albert stayed outside as lookout. Joe grabbed whatever he saw. Willie focused entirely on meat. Albert got bored waiting, walked inside, and immediately ran into Annie, a clerk who admired him. She enthusiastically helped him shop, making things painfully awkward. By the time Albert escaped, Willie was already outside, arms full of beef. Joe soon followed. When they realized Albert wasn't there, Joe grabbed a nearby electric scooter, chased Willie down, and told him to climb into the basket.
Jump in the basket.
Who the hell you think I am? E.T.?
Willie, jump in the bloody basket.
I'm not getting in no bloody basket!
The two old men sped off at 20 kilometers per hour, employees chasing behind them as they hurled stolen milk powder boxes like weapons, laughing and panicking all at once. The three old friends were soon taken to the supermarket surveillance room after their clumsy attempt. The manager, though clearly shocked by what he had seen, decided not to be too harsh. He felt that their actions were completely unsuitable for people of their age, yet he could tell they were not truly bad people. In the end, he let them go and even gave them a few supermarket discount coupons. After leaving, Albert felt especially annoyed. He had barely taken part, yet still received a full scolding. The incident also made all three of them realize a harsh truth. With their current health and state of mind, jumping straight into something as serious as a bank robbery was far beyond their limits. If they truly wanted to do this, they needed proper guidance and training.
I hate when he's right.
We're gonna need professional help.
You think?
Oh, yeah. We might as well turn ourselves in now.
Using connections built over decades, Joe took Willie to meet his former in-law, Murphy. Murphy worked as a cannabis distributor, and Joe believed he would know people from the darker corners of society. Murphy felt helpless about the situation, since he had only broken up with Joe's daughter and now found himself dragged into something dangerous. Still, refusing outright felt awkward, so he offered some leads. Following Murphy's directions, the three men drove out early the next morning and stopped in front of a pet shop. Joe wasted no time explaining their plan. They wanted to pull off a major job and needed professional training. In return, they offered a quarter of the profit. That night, they ate a simple meal together while Joe carefully recalculated the numbers. After subtracting the promised share, they needed exactly enough money to cover all three of their lost pensions. With a clear goal in mind, their training officially began. First, they surveyed the bank. This was the same place where they had collected pensions and benefits for years, so the layout was already familiar. This time, however, they paid closer attention, noting camera positions, exits, guards, and teller routines. Every detail mattered. Next came choosing the escape vehicle. Anything flashy was ruled out immediately. They needed something ordinary, slow-looking, and easy to ignore. Once preparations were done, physical training followed. Carrying more than $1 million in cash required strength and stamina, so they pushed their aging bodies as hard as they could. They also needed a solid alibi. A charity fundraiser at Park Number 15 provided the perfect cover, allowing them to pose as volunteers. From experience, they knew police response time was around 3 minutes, so their entire operation had to fit within that window.
Each teller's drawer is equipped with die packs and tracing devices. Now, they'll give you one if they can, but they will never endanger lives to do it.
Early practice runs were discouraging, with their first attempt lasting nearly 5 minutes. That meant capture was guaranteed. They kept practicing. Speed, coordination, and weapon handling were drilled repeatedly, with one strict rule: no one was to be harmed. As the foreclosure date on Joe's house drew closer, their teamwork improved. Their final rehearsal clocked in at just over 3 minutes, not perfect, but good enough to give them hope. On the day of the fundraiser, the three men blended into the crowd wearing volunteer uniforms. Each took up a role to avoid suspicion. When the time came, they regrouped in the car. Joe handed out weapons loaded only with blanks, and Willie parked directly in front of the bank. Masks went on, and each man entered through a different door. The plan unfolded quickly. Albert controlled the lobby, while Joe and Willie moved to the counters and filled bags with as much cash as possible. The bank was well-stocked that day, making a haul of over $12 million likely. However, things began to slip when Willie was distracted by a child who reminded him of his granddaughter. His health failed him for a moment, costing them precious seconds. The alarm was triggered, and police response became inevitable. With time already exceeded, retreat was their only option. Tension spiked when a bank employee attempted to intervene, but Joe remained calm, confident the threat was empty. Without hesitation, the three men grabbed 2 large bags of cash, rushed back to the car, and sped away, leaving the scene just before everything collapsed behind them.
Okay, folks. Count to 90 out loud and backward. And don't stand up until you get there.
Start counting!
By 2:49, everything was already under control. At 3:17, the police finished cordoning off the scene, while the 3 old men had calmly completed dividing the money inside the car. Joe and Albert stepped out first, knowing they had to separate to take care of the final arrangements. Bright smiles appeared on all their faces. Regardless of the amount of money they had taken, the experience itself had been thrilling beyond anything they had imagined. After putting everything in order, the 3 invited one another to a high-end restaurant and enjoyed an extravagant meal together. It was late at night when they finally walked out, still immersed in laughter and satisfaction. No one expected that Willie would suddenly fall ill and collapse. At the hospital, Joe and Albert were faced with a harsh reality. Willie's condition was serious, and survival depended on a kidney transplant. Albert stormed away in anger, while Joe tried to downplay the situation, reminding himself that between the two of them, a solution was possible. Even so, none of them could truly relax. Surveillance footage from the supermarket incident had already drawn police attention. The manager had filed a complaint, and the running style captured on camera strongly resembled the suspect from the robbery. After cross-referencing the footage, the police concluded there was a high probability that the same individuals were involved.
Same height, same weight.
A lot of people fit that bill.
Yeah, but who runs like that?
At that moment, Albert had just finished spending time with Annie and was getting dressed. When he noticed several police cars parked downstairs, he showed no panic at all, only mentally preparing for what was to come. Meanwhile, Willie remained in the hospital and could not be taken in for questioning, so federal agents went directly to his bedside. Joe, on the other hand, was attending his granddaughter's competition. When he noticed a police car approaching, he quickly made an excuse to leave the stands. Soon after, Joe and Albert were also brought in for questioning. This was a scenario they had rehearsed long ago, so none of them felt nervous. The authorities, however, treated the case with extreme seriousness. The stolen amount exceeded $23 million, making it impossible to ignore. Each man calmly recounted his daily routine, describing their movements in precise detail. That morning, they had all been busy with completely unrelated personal matters. According to the reconstructed timeline, Joe had briefly appeared at the ticket booth to establish his presence, then left under a reasonable excuse. Albert had entered the temporary restroom and used the tools he prepared in advance to quietly exit through the back door. Willie had changed into his disguise inside the haunted house and slipped away through another exit. Even the vehicle used matched the one registered for the charity event. After the operation, Joe entrusted the money to the pet shop owner, while Willie returned the car to the event location. The entire sequence lasted about an hour and appeared flawless. The investigators were deeply impressed. Every detail aligned perfectly, and the temporary alibis showed no obvious gaps. Still, even the most airtight plan can contain a hidden flaw. The authorities did not identify them as suspects without reason.
It was almost perfect. Except let me tell you a little something about criminals. They always make one stupid mistake that ends up screwing up the whole plan.
To narrow things down, they gathered elderly men matching the suspect profile and arranged a lineup at a basketball court. The little girl who had interacted with Willie during the robbery was brought in, as she was the only witness who had noticed a distinctive watch. After carefully observing everyone, the girl confidently stated that none of the men present were the ones she had seen that day. Whether by coincidence or kindness, she unknowingly helped Willie escape suspicion. At that point, the investigation reached a dead end. The next day, Joe met the trainer again at their usual diner. He gifted him a shop dog and made it clear that the money would not be shared further. The trainer, unfazed, expressed that caring for the elderly was a responsibility of society. Their conversation was interrupted when a federal inspector walked in to return Joe's wallet, which had been left at the station. The inspector's lingering attention on the dog caused a brief surge of tension, but nothing suspicious was discovered.
Oh, good heavens, aren't you just the cutest little thing? You get a look at you with your smushy face. When I was just a kid, I grew up with border collies.
After Joe left, the server later found an unusually generous tip on the table. In the end, even the forgotten old workers from the factory received their share. When everything finally settled, Willie and Albert lay side by side in the operating room. As friends of many decades, Albert donated a kidney to save Willie's life. Joe, meanwhile, successfully kept his house. After Willie recovered and was discharged, he and Joe stood beside Albert as groomsmen, witnessing his wedding with Annie. Surrounded by friends and family, the atmosphere was filled with joy. No one would have guessed that these three cheerful old men were responsible for the bank robbery. Heroes are not defined by where they come from, and ambition has no age limit. As long as someone dares to dream and take action, a new future can still be created. Of course, the robbery itself was only part of the story. The real question is whether one has the courage to take risks in life. And with that, the story comes to an end.